Okay, perfect. So, hello, my name is Dr. Crystal Tribbett, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Matthew McKenzie for In Our Own Words, the UCI Black Alumni Oral History Project. Today is November 22nd. It's so great to meet you, Matthew. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to meet you too.
So I want to start off by getting to know a little bit more about you and your background. So can you tell me a little bit about, where you grew up and what life was like before you went to college?
Sure. So I'm originally from California. I grew up in a small town called Atwater in Merced County. It's about a 5-hour drive north of, the LA Orange County area. It's a typical farm town. I'll put it simply like that. Small, about 20,000, 25,000 people. We only had one high school. When I went to high school, finally, they built a second one. So that kind of shows a picture of how small this city is. But yeah, typical small town life, not too much going on. I always like to tell people, our biggest city in reference would be Fresno. If you're familiar with Fresno, that's kind of like our LA, so to speak. And so, yeah, I grew up there, lived there until I was 18. My parents are still there. I'm actually going to visit them this coming week. So it'll be good to see them again after a while. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Whenever I explain to people where I'm from, I always have to say, where is that? Or, what's Fresno? And then just going from there.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have an older brother, older sister, and then I have a half sister as well.
So, growing up with in your family, what were the conversations like around education and college?
So my mom was really big on college. My dad was just kind of like, just do whatever you want. But in terms of school, we had to graduate high school, bare minimum. College was an option, not necessarily, necessary. But my brother went to San Diego State. My sister went the military route. And then later on, she went back to school to get her degree. But for me, I knew I wanted to go to college, and she really wanted to push me to do that. I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time, but she was behind me 100% of the way, even though during all the college apps and the visits and trying to go through this process, I was really the first, like, out of the three of us, I was the only one that really had to go in depth with figuring out where I wanted to go.
What was that? Can you tell me a little bit more about that process and what colleges were you considering and what did you think you wanted to study?
Yeah, so in contrast to my brother, he knew he wanted to go to San Diego, so that was like where he wanted. But for me, I didn't really have an idea of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do. So when that time came around, remembering back, I was really stressed out because there were so many options, and 90% of the schools that I was researching, I had no idea where they were or what they were about outside of my local area, because we only had pretty much two schools. It was either Fresno State or the local CSU Stanislaus. So applying to like the UC system, I had no idea where any of these schools were other than, a quick online search. And then when it came to my major, I knew I wanted to do science. But when I started learning more about the process, I realized there were multiple areas of science that I could go into. And then there's all these sub-subjects and all these specialties. And so I ended up choosing what I put on my application based on, which one was most likely going to get me into the school. So, and then once I got in, I would maybe change, what I wanted to do from there.
What did you put on your app? What did you put on most applications for which field of study you chose?
I chose chemistry, even though I absolutely hate it.
Okay.
And then I switched from there.
Interesting strategy for sure.
Yeah, and it worked. I got in, so I'm not complaining.
So, how did you end up choosing to apply to UCI and then actually attend?
Well, during my senior year of high school, I did, the typical UC application. Looking back, I didn't really know where Irvine was at the time, or what the school was. So it was just one of those, well, I have to choose four. I might as well choose Irvine as my last option, because I chose Santa Barbara, Davis, and I'm forgetting what the other one was. I want to say Riverside, but I'm not sure what that third one was. And so when I was accepted, I actually didn't choose Irvine as my first choice. I went to USC instead for my first 2 years of undergrad. And so I'm actually a transfer to UCI. I was accepted when I applied the second time around as a transfer student.
That's a really interesting path to UCI. So you applied the first time, but chose a different university, University of Southern California. And then you were there for, you said, 2 years?
Yes.
And then you decided to transfer from USC to University of California, Irvine?
Correct.
And can you tell me about that decision? What was your path to UCI as a transfer student?
So the main reason I transferred was due to finances. My second year at USC, there was a large cut in funding for students with scholarships. So I was one of them. And so as a result, I had to, it was a mutual decision between myself and my parents. We decided to, I moved back home to finish my, how do you call it, like transfer credits, like what I needed to do to switch from the University of Southern California system to the UC system, because they have different, requirements, and class units were all crazy. So I had to kind of refocus and figure out, okay, what do I need to do to get to the next step? And then I took a year to go to Merced Community College to get my general ed credits finished. And then once I did that, I started the reapplication process, and I was accepted to Irvine as a transfer student. And then I ended up going there the next year.
What was your first impression of UCI once you went to campus and kind of saw what this place was about? What was your first impression?
This looks really expensive. And even though I went to USC, it's still a different world in terms of, when I walked onto campus, we parked in the parking structure across from the student center, and walked in, everything's just like clean and pristine and nice. And then we walked into the bridge, area where the admin offices are, and saw the park in the middle. And I was just saying to myself that this is amazing. I've never seen anything like this. It was kind of like going through another culture shock, so to speak, of like, oh wow, this is suburbia land of Orange County. And this is probably the second time I've ever been to Orange County in my life. So it was definitely a new experience for me.
When you transferred, what was your major? Did you settle on?
I ended up doing biology. That was what I originally planned for to study. And so when I got in, I was really excited. And then later on, I found out that you could specialize in the School of Biology. So then, not the year I transferred, but the following year, I specified into microbiology.
I should have followed up with you earlier, but when exactly did you transfer? What year did you transfer into UC Irvine?
That was 2010, I want to say.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So you transfer in 2010, and then you get here and you're in biology. How can you tell me a little bit about what your academic life was like in your relationship with others in your department?
So it was actually kind of nice when I transferred, because I ended up living in Arroyo Vista in the themed biology house at the time. I don't know if it's still there or not, but a lot of my friends at the time, we were all transfer students, just from different places. So a lot of us had, the same ambition. We wanted to major in biology. We were all, not UCI freshmen. We were all, coming from our own backgrounds. So those relationships are actually really nice to have, because I didn't feel like I was alone. Like, I actually had people who went through similar events and, struggles that I did. So that was kind of nice. And then when it came to the academics, it was a definite step up in terms of rigor and putting in more effort compared to, where I was at community college. So, and then I learned about how competitive it is at Irvine. I didn't realize how much angst there was in the School of Biology for a lot of the students there. I definitely got the vibe that, there were some of the more elitist students there who were, trying to get all A's, and, here I am just trying to pass the class the first time. But it was good to have like that small network around me, so that way we could feed off of each other. And we were taking the same classes at, either same class or different times. So we were all in that same environment.
How would what role would you describe your academic department having in shaping your UCI experience?
I remember when I first met I guess you could say, our counselor. She came to the house, and she was really positive about, trying to help us move forward and, graduate on time. So that way, we're successful and we're not spending, more time at Irvine, at least more than we have to get through our classes. So that was really reassuring to hear from her. I just wish I remembered her name. And then when I got into my senior year, I took my seminar class with Dr. Fruman and some of the other professors, and they were really supportive compared to some of the undergrad classes. It was kind of a nice little switch from taking, the basic classes to the more senior level classes, because they actually care more for the students, and it helped out a lot, just to kind of bring that extra motivation in to, accomplish the goal of graduating.
Were there other faculty members or staff that were, motivational or mentors in as far as, academics or even your overall, wellness, well-being at UCI?
Yeah, I worked, well, not worked with, but I was under Dr. Parham for a little bit, uh, just kind of off and on, just checking in, seeing, how I'm doing, do I need anything, could be like assistance with anything. So that was good, uh, just to kind of have that check-in every so often to make sure I'm okay. Some of the other professors, Dr. Paulus, if I remember right, he taught biochemistry. I was actually doing really well in his class, and he kind of helped me a little bit to like make sure that I'm meeting all the requirements for my major, because I was in a weird phase where they were kind of changing the major program. So there were certain classes they were removing, and so he made sure that I was able to meet the requirements through another class because they weren't offering it at the time and I was about to graduate. And so he said he didn't want me to do another quarter just to, pay all this extra money just to graduate. So his help was really, really, really helpful at the time.
And you mentioned Dr. Parham, who at the time he was in student affairs at the
Yeah,
time, or was
I
he in a
think, yeah,
different role?
I want to say he was in student affairs. I don't know if he was VP yet. Yeah, my timeline is all funky, but I think he was in student affairs at the time.
So how did you get to know him to the level that he was kind of checking in on you?
We had an event. It was kind of like like a black picnic event sponsored by BSU. So we met there. He introduced himself, and I went up and introduced myself to him. Uh, and then he asked me, who was I? Where did I come from? I'm just telling him about myself, and then he just offered, if you need anything, just shoot me an email, and then I'll respond to you, and then that's how we kind of like established rapport from there.
That's really interesting. It sounds like a good opportunity to get to know administrators as a student and have a good rapport with them.
Yeah, he was really the only administrator outside of the department that I really talked to, because as a science student at Irvine, you really don't have much time to do anything for the most part. It's either study or study.
Got it. So did you take any classes outside of the sciences?
Yeah, I couldn't do it my junior year just because I had to make up all the requirements. But my senior year, I got into education. So I started taking teaching classes through the UCI School of Ed, through their Cal Teach program. And then I did some other like physical ed, types of classes, but that was it for the most part.
When you weren't studying, what were you doing? Can you tell me a little bit about your other activities, your social life and involvement on campus?
Yeah, so I think the first year I was there, I joined this club, MAPS, the Minority Association for Pre-Med Students. And I was there for 2 years. The first year I was just a member, but the second year I joined the board to help out with outreach and sponsoring events, getting more students, to come to meetings and work with the medical school students, SNMA organization there. Just to kind of, because at the time I was interested in being a physician when I first transferred to Irvine. So I wanted to get involved in something that would help me, learn more about the field and potentially pursue a career in there. So that was one of the clubs. One semester, I joined, this was a new club. We actually created a marching band at Irvine. And so we did it for the fall semester. I forget what year it is. I have a video somewhere. But it was just a group of members of the pep band and then just some other students from around school who just wanted to do something different. And so we tried it and it worked. We performed. And then that was it after that. I don't think they ever had it since.
Yeah, I'd like to know a little bit more about the pep. This is the first time I've ever heard of a marching band, a prep band at UC Irvine. So, what were you attending? Where were you performing?
So we met in the arts, department area where they have, their practices and all that. So they had a room specifically for the music program. And so I would say there was about, just the musicians, there was about 50 to 60 of us. And then we did have a color guard, about 9 or 10 members. And so, yeah, we would meet up maybe once a week to practice and learn music and to figure out what we were doing in terms of, are we going to make this happen? And so, and then when we actually did practice, for our field performance, we did go out to the soccer fields where they actually, play the professional games. So we were out there every so often. Like as the time got closer, we would be practicing like twice a week, working on our drills and formations. And then in terms of performances, we performed twice. I'm forgetting the first one because it was kind of like a practice run just for like close friends. But our like debut performance was at one of the men's soccer games that evening. And so we played, I guess you could say, the halftime show with our, with everyone together. And the crowd seemed to enjoy it for the most part. I guess it was something new for them to see. They're like, hey, we actually have a band, even though that was the only time they saw it. But it was a good time. Yeah.
What instrument did you play?
I was on the drum line. So I was the middle bass drum.
And how big was the group approximately? Do you recall?
The drum line, we weren't that big. There were maybe 8 of us, but all together, band and color guard, I would say maybe about 70 people.
Wow, that's really awesome. And did you say it? How long did that club program last?
It was only a semester, just a couple of months, no more than that. It was kind of like a flash mob, so to speak, for marching band. Like we did it, and then that was it.
Do you recall why you all didn't continue?
Because when the winter sports start, basketball and some of the other sports, that's when the pep band actually, takes over and they go to the games and perform. So it's hard to do both marching and pep band at the same time. So a lot of the members were in the pep band. So schedule conflicts, they couldn't do both at the same time. So we would just end it at the winter season. And then I graduated the next year, or that spring. So I don't know if they continued after that or if that was officially it.
I see. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Were there other groups that you're involved in, like clubs, organizations, or activities?
Yeah, well, this was when I came back from my master's degree, I joined the DJ club on campus, and I learned how to be a DJ essentially. So I met up with the group. I want to say once a week on campus, and then we paired up with people who were currently DJing or had experience. And so my mentor, he didn't go to Irvine, but he worked with the program a lot to help build it. And funny thing was, he was actually a teacher too, a high school chemistry teacher. So he kind of helped mentor me in both DJing as well as education at the same time. So that was a great experience for me because I wanted to continue with music, but with my master's program, it again, it's like far hours in between. So I try to carve out something just so I can keep my sanity during that time period. So that was a good club to join. I also did fencing for a little bit, not too long, but I took a course at the athletic center, and then they actually had a small club group there. So I said, why not? Just try it, see if you like it. And I did. And I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. It was hard. It was really hard. But it was a fun time there as well. I was a part of BSU for a little bit. But as time went on and classes took more of my time, I kind of let it go for a little bit. I think that was it. Yeah, I think that was all the organizations I was in.
I'm gonna come back to your choosing to attend for UCI for your master's.
Yeah.
In just a minute, but I wanted to learn a little bit more about what the people were like, what the Black community was like on campus when you were an undergrad, and what you might remember about just like what the student body, what was the atmosphere like on campus. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So in terms of the community, I kind of met them from day one. I think it was that orientation week I was there. They had an event. I forget I think it was just a general meet and greet. And so if I remember the room correctly, there was like maybe 40, maybe 50 of us just talking to each other, just getting to know each other. So the atmosphere was very friendly, very, I don't want to say family, but very like close off the bat. And so I met a lot of people there day one. And then they took us on a tour around UCI. I went to AV or Royal Vista, where they had the house specifically for students who were majoring in African American studies or just wanted to live there. And so we hung out there for a little bit. And then, throughout the events, throughout the year, just meeting up every so often just to kind of hang out, or they would have, parties at the house, or just like barbecues or something. There's always something going on. And so just overall, it was really nice. Like the vibe was really good with the students on campus, and that was really helpful to meet people that way. In terms of the overall, feel of campus, everyone was really friendly for the most part. I didn't really have any bad experiences there, other than, people being stressed out for finals. But I think people were generally nice, respectful, didn't really have any ill will towards anyone. Yeah, it was just really, it was different, which is compared to where I was previously. So it was just kind of nice to experience that.
Can you expand on that, like how it was different?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, let's say, um, like if I was at USC, it's even though it's a large school, it's actually a small campus. So oftentimes you would see like people like running into each other, or or if someone was, on a bike, they would just like be like crashing into people. Like it seemed like it was kind of like that stereotypical LA life, just like rush, rush, rush. But when I got to Irvine, it was just kind of laid back, not as chaotic, definitely not as, high strung, just very like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Or you could be just, in the park, asleep, and, someone will be next to you and they'll watch over you as you take a nap, for example. So definitely a different, different experience from, one school to another.
And you mentioned you lived in Arroyo Vista, and there was a lot of parties and things going on there. Can you tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more about living on campus and the what the experience was like, and a little bit more about Arroyo Vista? I mean, I feel like people mention it a lot, but um, maybe people don't know as much about it as we think we do. So give us the inside detail of what it's like in Arroyo Vista.
Yeah. So it was different for me in terms of like living on campus, because when I went to USC, their dorms are, the typical dorms, you one long hallway, everyone's sharing a bathroom, that type of experience. So at Royal Vista, their houses. So the bio house was 3 stories. Each floor you have your own like bathrooms, and you have a roommate, instead of like sharing, one bathroom for 32 people, which would be insane. And in that area, there's the themed houses, but there was also the fraternity houses and some of the sorority houses in that area. So when I mentioned that there were a lot of parties going on, there were a lot of parties going on, especially on Thursdays. So you would see a lot of students just, either outside or going from, house to house, or if they were running to the bus stop, whatever was happening during that day. The rec center is literally, a 2-minute walk down. So you would see students coming from there a lot. A lot of the houses would be having events outside, and either in front of their houses or, in the grass, in between the houses. So for example, you would see maybe like the Sigma Nu, boys, playing volleyball or something, or you would see some other sorority that would be having like a dinner outside. It was crazy chaos when it was, I don't know what it's called, but when they would like accept their pledges, and everyone would be outside having their like giving their letters out. It would just be chaos, because you would hear girls screaming at like 2 in the afternoon, and you're looking out the window like, what the heck is going on? Who's getting kidnapped? What is going on? And so it there, most of the time it was a lot of activity during the week. But then because I'm not from Southern California, and Irvine I learned when I got there, Irvine had that commuter school feel to it. So on the weekends, it would be essentially dead to the world, because a lot of the local students would either be busy or they would go home. And so a lot of us who were transferring in from not from Southern California or from out of state we would literally have Arroyo Vista to ourselves, and no one would be there. So that's what it was kind of like there, living on campus.
Thank you for sharing that. Were there any kind of major happenings on campus in the years that you attended as an undergrad? Any major events or changes to the campus or administration, or anything you might recall?
Nothing really I mean, outside of the normal, I mean, I remember the first week they had their new student kind of get together. I forget where it was. I want to say it was at the Bren Center.
Are you talking about SPA? Um,
Not
the
spot.
or
It's like it
SPA?
was the event. Like once you were accepted, they called like all the new like
It's
freshmen
like
and transfer student.
maybe it's like Phase Goose or Celebrate UCI.
It was before that. I forget the name of it. It wasn't Ways Goose though.
No.
But I do remember Ways Goose. That's one of them. That the first time I went there, because my roommate he loves reggae music, so and ska music, so he's just like, oh, you got to go to this. So I went with him, and it was fun. It was good to. I'm not from Orange County, so I learned that that's kind of the Orange County music scene, so to speak. And then homecoming was always fun. I worked at the Bren Center at the time, so seeing all the alumni and students come was crazy. It was fun, but it was crazy because everyone's belligerent, so to speak. um, let's see, what else? There was when they had their, I don't know what the event was called, but UC Irvine has a lot of dance competitive groups on campus. So there was one event where they had all the groups, come out and perform, and then for about like 3 to 4 hours, and it was kind of like a mini concert slash, dance show. So that was fun to see, and they invited groups from outside of campus, and then they performed as well. Once upon a time, I wanted to audition for one of them, but I didn't want to stay up till 4 in the morning. So that decision was made appropriately. But those are the only ones that I really remember out, like in terms of the bigger like events.
Yeah. I mean, even thinking, it was so 2010 is when you transferred in, and then you graduated undergrad. What year?
2012.
2012. So, yeah, I've been thinking, if there was any kind of major world happenings that maybe influenced the ebb and flow of the campus.
At that time, there were a lot of, I guess you could say, like early protesting with, I think it was Tamir Rice, if I remember right. That's when he was shot and killed. I want to say that was the beginning of that year, along with some of the other Michael Brown incidences. And there were a lot of protestings around that on campus. And then there were some others in terms of Obama was president at the time. So we had some counter protests against him on campus. He actually spoke at our graduation that year. So it was interesting to see for the first time. I think that was the first time I've seen, protesting on that level on campus.
Yeah.
And it was good to see. It kind of took the campus by surprise a little bit, because I think UC Irvine is kind of conservative when it comes to that type of interaction. So when groups would come, off campus, or if it was BSU protest, or if it was, AAPI protest or whatever it was at the time, those types of events did happen. Not so often, but when they were occurring, it kind of did, change the vibe a little bit around campus, even though it was for the greater good. Some students just kind of were hesitant in sharing their opinion on how they felt about those things, because again, that might just be, how they grew up or what the environment's like. So those were kind of some of the issues that were happening at the time. And then since Obama was president, I think it was ending his first term, going into the second one, a lot of opinions were being shared. I didn't realize how many conservatives were actually on campus when I was living there. Looking back on it, I didn't realize how many there were.
And I was like, dare I ask what some of the kind of the opinions and rhetoric was?
I'll share one. One of my roommates at the time, he's from the Northeast. So, and this is my first time meeting someone from, that area. And so he's very, like pro-gun, like hardcore, flag conservative bearer. And so we would have conversations about this, and he would say, oh, I'm not for, what's the term I want to say? I'm not for the using like private money for the public good, kind of like social services type of thing. And so I would, probe him on, why are social services such a bad thing? If it helps, those who are in need. And then it would kind of go into people need to work, people need to, get their own, which I agreed with, but there's like a certain point where it kind of goes from the logical perspective into the emotional part of it, instead of, actively seeing, what the need is versus what the individual wants. So some of those ideas were out there, some more extreme than others, but that was part of the conversation we would have.
Were conversations like that common on campus?
At the time, no. We would really rarely have those type of conversations. At the time, it was, I guess you could say, it was a different world then. In terms of like student life, we were just kind of just focused on, getting through school, partying like crazy, but not really the outside real world issues coming into campus. If they did talk about them, it would be in like BSU meetings or like those type of meetings, but on an outside social level, not so much.
Yeah. You mentioned BSU, Black Student Union, and that you had been a part of it a little bit while you were there. And you mentioned maybe some of these tougher conversations about what was going on, kind of the state of the United States around that time in the Black Student Union. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, so I remember one conversation we were talking about I guess you could say people going missing, or like people who would run away, or disappearances, things like that. And so one meeting we were talking about the statistics behind that, on how Black youth or just Black people in general who go missing are, one, not a priority to find, or two, for whatever reason it may be, the local police organizations don't focus on those cases as much as other populations. So topics like that, where the data is real, the numbers are there, it's supported, and you can see how Black people are not a priority in terms of search, like those who go missing and who are being searched for. So we did have some conversations like that, where we were bringing in the real outside issues coming into the college life, so to speak.
What was kind of the general goal or hopes for what those conversations would lead to, or the purpose of those conversations within within the BSU?
Yeah, so if I remember right, I think the goal was just to bring awareness to the subject. I think there was a small, not in California, but I think in other parts of the U.S. there were issues with college students female college students who were disappearing for whatever reason. And so that was kind of what was going on at the time. So it was just kind of just bringing awareness to, oh, hey, this is happening, you know, in parts of the country, just kind of, discussing, what could be happening, what's going on, is it a relationship? Is it, is it because they knew someone, or is it just because of, well, at the time it wasn't trafficking yet, but, human trafficking at the time, just some of those issues that were going on.
Thank you for sharing. And you mentioned that on campus there had been some protests or events awareness around kind of the Tamir Rice incident, and that was in 2014. And Obama, former President Obama, spoke at UCI around 2014, right? 2014.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As well. And that would have been the time that you were in graduate school at UCI,
Mm-hmm.
correct? So
Correct.
can tell me a little bit about, staying at UCI, choosing to do your master's degree at the university. Yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, I still can't believe I did that. Yeah, so I got my master's in teaching. I was in the program that year, and I graduated when Obama spoke there. So he was our speaker for that graduation. So I wasn't on campus that much because, in the school, when you're getting your teaching credential, you're usually at your school site more so than on campus, just to get your hours done. So whenever I was on campus, it would be at like evening, nighttime, for my night classes. And so I would also have my DJ club that I mentioned earlier. So whenever I would go to that club, I would either stop by the BSU meetings, or they would be having some type of, event of some kind at the flagpole area, where they would, be speaking on whatever. So when the Tamir Rice, when he was shot and killed, BSU was definitely out there. I remember they were having kind of, what's it called? A vigil? Yeah, a vigil / prayer for him. It was either the day of or the day after it happened. And so a lot of the students were there. Some of the faculty were there, just to kind of honor, what happened. And then afterwards, they were just kind of, again, putting some of the statistics out there, about crime rates, shooting deaths, especially among Black youth, the racism in, police forces, that's unspoken of, a lot of those topics that were, centered around that. And so when Obama spoke, I think all of that just kind of was pushed down just because, it was Obama and, he's there. And so during that time period, it was just like, okay, the president of the United States is speaking, we got to make sure everything looks nice and clean and right. And, throw out all the bells and whistles for this man. So it's funny looking back because, like, even though all of that was going on at the same time, the school kind of put the priority on, here's our nation's president versus, what's, actually going on in the world. So interesting little dichotomy there.
Yeah, definitely interesting. Thank you for sharing, about that. How is graduation experience for you when, President Barack Obama spoke at UC Irvine?
I just remember it being a long day um, because of all the security clearance, everyone had to go through. So I think ours was in the afternoon, but we got there early, stood in line, and then we had to wait hours just to get in, just to sit down. And then once we were able to sit down, we had to wait even longer just for him to, give his speech and, all that. But I think it was the overall like good of it was there. I think everyone was excited, like, oh my God, it's him. He's there. Like, I could see him. I could take a picture. But yeah, it was just a chaotic day. I remember we were all exhausted. We were just like, I just can't wait to leave. It was hot and we were outside. But it was good. I think seeing him was kind of reassuring to like, okay, he's human, he's real, it's a president, that's nice to see. And I think, not only just him, but just having, a Black president, speak at your graduation is like, it's so cool. Like, I could say that.
Matthew, I don't know that you mentioned why you decided to get your teaching credential to do your graduate work at UC Irvine instead of going someplace else.
No, so yeah, I'll talk about that. So it's an interesting story, so to speak. So when I graduated my undergrad, I didn't really know what I wanted to do afterwards. I got a job working in, the science field, but I learned that it wasn't what I really wanted to do at the time. So since I had that experience, teaching, I was taking those classes on campus, I said, why not? Like, let's see if I can do it, if it works out, we'll just see what's going to happen. So I applied the first time right after I graduated to get into the program, but life happened. So as a result, I wasn't able to go that year. And so I asked the program if I could defer to the following year. And so they said yes. So I said, okay, if everything works out the way it's supposed to, then I'll join next year. And so I did. I accepted. And I didn't really apply to any other schools for my teacher credential just because, I just said, hey, I'm here at Irvine. Since I'm already, in with some of the professors and I have that experience, I don't see why they wouldn't take me. So I kind of just put all my eggs in that basket and they said, yeah. So I accepted that year, 2013, I want to say. And not knowing too much about education and how that world works, I got the experience in terms of the teaching end, but I didn't really know much about the back end of it. So I learned a lot through that program in terms of, how it works, where you're coming from. A lot of it was the practical, information, but it doesn't really prepare you once you're actually in the field teaching professionally, as an educator. So I think I learned more teaching these last 8-9 years than, being in the master's program / teaching credential program. So it's a lot. It was a lot. The program itself is insane. I don't even know how I got through it looking back. Teaching and doing school and doing a thesis, it's not for the faint at heart. It's not for the faint.
We've talked so much about a lot about your experiences at UCI, and we're going to wrap up pretty soon, but I have a few more questions for you. And one is certainly, what is you have a lot of memories of being on campus and being a part of campus. What would you say is your fondest memory?
Mm, I think I would say my fondest memory would be, this is going to be a crazy story. So my roommate and I, at the time when I was living on campus, he worked at Starbucks, the Starbucks on campus. So, he would, I shouldn't say this, but he was hooking us up, right? And so we would go, like, he worked the late shift. So we would go on campus, to, meet him up when they would close. And so when we were there, we actually met. I don't know if you're familiar with Tony Hawk, the pro skater, but he was there on campus, and we met him because he was in town doing some promotion for something, and he was there at the Starbucks, and we were just like starstruck. It was so cool. It was just a random meeting for like 10 minutes, and we were all just like, "Oh my god, he's a celebrity! Like, what do we do?" But yeah, that's one of my favorite memories there. Just kind of like having a celebrity experience.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, you sound like you've had like a really overall positive experience at UCI. And I wonder if there were any challenges that you faced that you had to overcome, and how you overcame them.
Yeah, I try to block those out. A lot of the harder experiences were coming from the coursework and the interactions with some of my classmates. What I didn't know at the time was that I knew I would be like a minority in science, because there's like far and few between it for us. But then once I got into my senior coursework, I was like, oh my God, I really am like the only one in the room, like literally the only one in the room. And so there would be a lot of times where, and we would share this in our MAPS meetings, like, hey, are you taking, such and such a class? And they're like, no, like, I'm literally the only Black person in the room. And for me, it would be like, okay, how do I like find a group to work with and study and try to like digest some of this material? And then when some of those interactions would come about where I would try to like reach out to someone, it was very like cold shoulder, like, oh, like, no, I'm busy, or no, I'm, da 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 da. So it like outside of the people I already knew, trying to like reach out and find some new people, it was really hard to kind of, establish those relationships at the time. I did eventually get to know some people, but it like I said, as you move up and you realize like, oh, okay, this is kind of like what it is. It's very closed off in certain places in terms of your peer groups or your classmates, just trying to kind of like, you want to do better and you need help to do better, but sometimes the help isn't there. So it's just kind of those moments. And then I could go on for hours about the counseling department and how sometimes they like essentially almost screwed me over for the most part. I
Oh
remember when
no.
I remember when I transferred. So part of the transfer requirement for the sciences is that you take, your basics like biochem physics. They almost didn't want to take my physics requirement and made me want to retake the entire class over again. And so that was a battle. Eventually they did. I did have to take the first quarter of physics, and then I passed, and then they said, oh, okay, well, we'll give you the rest of it. So it's like, Why did you make me go through that again when I told you, like that type of stuff. So yeah, those are just a couple of them
Yeah.
throughout the years I was there.
How did you get past those challenging moments? Like, looking for camaraderie and colleagues within your own department or support through the counseling center or something else. How did you get beyond those hurdles?
A lot of it, just being around friends, just kind of getting that negative, energy off of me. Definitely talking to my parents, just kind of getting, that reassurance that, I'm doing okay, I'm doing all right. Just try your best. That's all you can do. And definitely kind of getting, reaching out to some of the admin, some of the professors, just to kind of, ask for help a little bit more often. Because a lot of the material I was learning was really new to me. So it was kind of like filling in those gaps of where I missed something and, going to office hours a lot, going to tutoring a lot, reaching out to the people who I did know who were in those programs with me, and we would hang out a little more often, just to kind of, get to learn the material a little bit better, spending those extra hours, till 2, 3 in the morning studying. A lot of gym time, a lot of exercise time, just a lot to get the stress out. Yeah, just a lot of social time with friends. That helped out a lot, just to kind of take my mind off of
If you had kind of some words of wisdom to share with current UCI students, especially those Black students who are new to the campus or facing different challenges or your triumphs too. I mean, what kind of words of wisdom would you share with them based on your experiences?
Definitely try something new or different. Kind of expand your your realm of your day-to-day life. So for example, like I joined a DJ club. I never DJ'd ever in my life. And I met a lot of cool people there. I met one of my mentors there. I met again that small group of people who you could just like hang out with, who you've never met before in your life. When it comes to like academics, definitely find that core, maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 people who are in your subject area, who you can meet up with, who you can, study, take tips off of, meet some people who are upperclassmen, who went through the same, coursework, same steps that you're planning on doing, just so you can be prepared for, if you're going to take, advanced blah blah blah, like what to expect, what to prepare for. I wish I had someone who taught me how to write an essay, because I am horrible at essay writing. When I took my writing class, I learned how to write an essay. But I had to go through a bunch of D's and C's to get to a decent paper, learning how to write and communicate effectively. That's one of the big things I try to push some of my students to do, is learn how to express your thoughts. So join, places where you can do that, whether it's like poetry or singing or something like that. Just find a place to learn to, share your thoughts. definitely don't be afraid to talk to new people. It might be scary at first, but just saying hi, how are you, goes a long way. And then you can, end up meeting someone who's actually you're into that program you want to get into. Relationships are important because nowadays I feel like people are trying to do it themselves, and it's not really how the world works. as we know, sometimes you got to work with people who you may not even imagine talking to over coffee one day. But yeah, that's just some of the tips I have.
Thank you for sharing your tips. You mentioned you found a mentor in your DJ, in the DJ club. Do you remember who your mentor was? The name of your mentor?
I just call him Oda. That's his last name. He ended up saying like, oh yeah, I teach high school, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So you can help me there, like figure out what I'm doing, because I have no idea what I'm doing when I teach this class.
Can you share with us, what are you up to now? What did you end up doing after graduation?
So after undergrad, I got a job working in, like I said, in environmental science testing. Hated it. So I went back to school to get my teaching credential. So I'm still teaching. I'm in my eighth year of teaching science. Doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't. Right now, I'm in San Pedro at Port of Los Angeles High School. I'm teaching physics to mostly 11th graders, but I have a mix of everyone. Currently living in Long Beach, California, trying to buy a house eventually, see if that's going to happen one day. It's my next goal. But yeah, just enjoying life right now, enjoying Southern California.
We've covered a lot of topics. Is there anything that, is there anything that you really wanted to talk about, but I didn't get to, that you'd like to talk about now?
Totally random topic, but when I worked at the Bren Center, it's definitely a good way to meet some really famous people. I'll just put it that way. I saw Kobe Bryant practice. May he rest in peace.
And last but not least, can you sum up your UCI experience in 3 words? What would, if you had to summarize in 3 words, what would those 3 words be?
3 words. Wow. Okay. Give me a minute for that. Challenging. Challenging. Memorable. Worthwhile. I'll choose those 3.
Matthew, it has been really great getting to know you and talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories with me.
Oh, I'm glad to share. I hope it helps out with this project.
It absolutely will. Really appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.